So in this video, I'm going to address what I see as the biggest or most common problem with my students' work by critiquing their paintings. All right, so if you don't know, I have a Patreon, and when you sign up, you get access to a private Facebook group. So I thought I'd make a good YouTube video to go in that Facebook group and ask people to submit paintings that they'd want to be critiqued, and I could make a YouTube video out of it. And what happened was I got a bunch of paintings, and I kept seeing the same problem over and over, so much so that I felt it necessary to make an entire video on this one topic. And that one topic is value relationships. So that's what I'm gonna be addressing in this video. I'm gonna go through my students' paintings, critique them, and then after that, I'm gonna give you some tips and strategies on how to better handle values in your paintings. Now, before we jump in, I just want to say that I was really impressed with the paintings that were submitted. I really wish I could have critiqued all of them. I mean, some of them I feel like I didn't even need to critique or do that much to. Also, I'm just really proud of that Facebook group. It's turned into something way more than I thought it would be. And it's such a great, positive painting community. And I think we're getting close to 1,000 people in it. So it's a good sample of people to get, an honest read on your work. Or if you have any oil painting related questions, there's probably someone in there that will be able to answer it for you. All right, let's get into critiquing these paintings. All right, so the first one is this Bloody Mary. I did a Patreon tutorial of this, got mine on the left, students on the right. And so, the first thing that jumps out at me are the values. The colors are good in the students. It's got a good drawing, good form, everything's there. It's just I wish they would have pushed mainly the darks a little bit more. You see, if I take the dark side of the jar on mine and put it in here, it's really gonna change things up. I'm just gonna roughly put this in, but it's going, getting the values down just in one area like this is gonna help you see other areas a lot better. I put this in, now I can realize that I can change this lighter and I can actually make it a little darker and get away with more of that orange. It's also influencing how I see this lime, and I realized, oh wow, I really need to darken this lime. So I can get more dark to the lime in. Also, it's going to help make the bright seem brighter. Like right now, the highlight on this lime isn't really popping. So if I just get some darker values around it, when it comes time for this lightest highlight, it's actually gonna pop. Having a full range of values is what's gonna help you portray form. Just something simple like this celery stick, getting this dark area, it's gonna make the light area look brighter and just give more form to that celery stalk. All right, now we have this teapot. And again, their drawing looks great, their colors are on point. It's just the relationships of values that need to be worked on here. Whenever you have something reflective like this teapot, value relationships are just so important because that's how you're gonna make things look reflective, or putting the right light and darks next to each other. So for this, I really wish they would have pushed the darks a lot more. Down here, you can see that can go a little bit darker, get all this dark in. And when you put all these darks in, it's going to make the lights really pop when you put them in, which is the main concern when doing, reflective surfaces like this. So I'm just gonna get all these in. So once you have the darks laid in, when you put in the lighter values, like this pink here, and then this brightest highlight, it's gonna stand out and you're gonna start getting that reflective look. Now for this boat one, we're gonna be talking about atmospheric perspective. And the thing to know about atmospheric perspective is that as things get further away from you, the contrast and values get less. So a certain object in the foreground, the lights and darks are gonna be very far away from each other. But if you put that same object far in the distance, those light and dark values are gonna get closer together. So they did a really good job with the boat here. I think they got a great combination of light and dark values. It's working great. The only problem is I feel like this back here, these really dark darks and light lights in the top of this roof are distracting and pulling away from the boat, and it's not really setting all of this back in the distance. So I'm just gonna kind of take the shadow color I have back here and knock back these darkest darks that I see. It's gonna lower the contrast. Let me put some in the trees a little bit here, kind of work a little transparent of that color in the light side of the trees just to make the shadow and the light side closer together. And then for this roof, not gonna make it nearly as bright. Knock that back, knock back this white there. And you can see already that it's not pulling attention away from the boat. It's sitting more in the distance, which is what we want. Now, another thing to be aware of is that if you have something in the foreground and the brights aren't popping the way you want them to, the way they should be as something in the foreground, look at what's around it. For example, here with this boat, the lights are popping pretty well, but I think they could push it just a little bit more by darkening the blue of the water around this white boat. Let's just darken this blue, and you can see it's making this seem a lot brighter, which is bringing it forward. All right, we got another portrait here, and again, good drawing, good colors, just the values could be dialed in a little better. So when I see this, like the first thing I would want to get is this dark down here, down in this little corner. And I feel like if I could get that in, it would influence and help me figure out everything else. It made me realize I could push this darker, and you can see by pushing that darker, it's separating the head from the neck, because the neck is a little further back. So you're gonna get that separation. Also the background, look for the background to help you out too. Like just getting this dark in is gonna make you see the face, you know, differently. And a lot of this face is in the light, so it can be kind of tricky, but a lot of times you can go darker in the lights than you think you can. Like push that a little darker. And also this side of the face is more in shadow. You can see, could definitely find a lot more darker values in that. And values are just so important when it comes to portraits. I mean, it's important with everything, but with portraits, so much of it is form, creating the correct form, and you create form with value. You know, that's how we're going to make things look three-dimensional. So when you limit your values, you're limiting your ability to create form in the face. Even the darkest darks, like in here in the eyes, kind of push those and get them deeper. And you could also find some, you know, lighter values. I've been talking a lot about darker values, but I think just putting in some lighter values here will help. All right, and the last one is this Seascape from El Matador Beach. You know, there's a lot of good things about this painting, but I just feel like they stumbled kind of when they got to this area right here. And I kind of wish they would have put more of this color in here, which is a darker value. And the main thing is that it's going to make your wave look brighter. I'm gonna zoom in here and show you that they were really putting on some thick paint for this white, and I'm guessing that they were doing that to try and make it look brighter, because they were struggling with making it look bright because it was next to a whole bunch of other lighter values. So getting a bunch of darker values in here would have made it so they didn't have to cake on so much paint for the white of the wave. All right, now let's talk about some strategies to better handle values. The first thing you can do is work dark to light. A lot of times I will get my darkest darks in first because I find them the easiest to get right. And once I have that really dark value, I can use that and compare it to other values that I put in. For example, with this Bloody Mary, I knew the background was gonna be the darkest dark, so I get some of that in. So then when I move to the shadowed side of the jar, I can better gauge how dark or light to make that. Because I can see, yes, it is lighter than the background, but it's not that much lighter. So if I focus on just nailing that value relationship between the shadowed side of the jar and the background, I can get it pretty close. Now I have two values that I'm pretty confident are accurate, and I can use both of those to keep adding on values in the painting. It's kind of like piecing together a puzzle. And you can kind of use the last piece to figure out the next piece. And the more pieces you get, the easier it is to figure out the missing pieces. Even with the lime here that I blocked out with a flat color that was kind of a mid-tone value, when I go and work back into it, I start with the darker values and build to the lighter values. It's also just gonna be physically easier to work dark to light because it's easier to layer light paint on top of darker paint. I also suggest working thin to thick, so when you lay in your darkest darks, it's with thinner paint and your lightest lights are with thicker paint. All right, my next piece of advice is don't be afraid of putting in too many darks at the beginning. I mean, look at this Teapot. At the beginning, I covered the entire thing with nothing but dark values. And again, I kept the paint relatively thin with paint thinner so I could build lighter values on top of it. But by putting down more darks than you probably need, you're limiting the possibility of you having to go back in and reestablish some darks. Now, most of the time you are gonna have to go back and reestablish darks. It's completely normal. You're always gonna be bouncing back and forth from darks to lights. I just rather put in too many darks and then just push them back with the lights, opposed to having to go back later and work around lights and fit in darks. A lot of times when I have to go back in and reestablish darks, I will scrape down my light paint or just paint over it and kind of like restart the process again. All right, third tip is don't be fooled by photos. In this boat painting by the student, we went over how the darks and the lights in the boat were similar to the darks and the lights way in the background. And to be fair, the photo kind of showed that. You can pull out darks and lights in this background that were the same darks and lights that were in the boat. So when you see something like that in the photo, it should be a red flag that, hey, I'm gonna have to change this a little bit, because photos will trick you. I've made a video on that. If you wanna watch it, I'll put a link to it above right here. But one of the things photos do is that they make the darks darker and the lights lighter than they really are. So most of the time, you can't 100% go by the photo for values. All right, and last tip, when blocking out your light values in the beginning of a painting, don't block them out too light. You don't wanna go to the brightest light that you see right away. You kind of want to go to what I say is the darkest light value that you can. This way it leaves you with somewhere to go with the lighter values, because you're going to want to build dark to light, and that goes for the light parts of your painting. You want to go from like the darkest light to the lightest light. For example, in this portrait, when I'm blocking out the light side of the face, it is a lighter value, but it's definitely not the lightest value. So once I put it in, I can then add on lighter values on top of that to create more form. If I had put it in really bright right from the start, it's not gonna really leave me anywhere to go. Because remember, the way that you're gonna portray form in a portrait is through values. And so if you limit your values, you're limiting your ability to create form. All right, that's it for this video. If you liked it, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you wanna check out my Patreon page, link to that is in the description below. And if you wanna see what I'm painting on a daily basis, you can follow me on Instagram at Forza43. I'm Chris Fornatero, here telling you to go get painting.